West Ford was born in 1784 or 1785 on the Bushfield Plantation in Westmoreland County, Virginia, to Venus, a mulatto slave woman owned by George Washington's brother, John Augustine Washington, and his wife, Hannah. According to Ford's oral history, Venus told her mistress, Hannah, that George Washington was the child's father. Of course, historians dispute this fact, suggesting that one of Washington's nephews may have been the father of the boy West. Over the next several years, 1785, 1791, George Washington frequently visited the Bushfield Plantation. During these visits, West Ford served as Washington's personal attendant. Washington took him riding and hunting, and Ford often accompanied him to Christ Church. Sounds familiar, huh? Where he was provided with a private pew. After Washington became President of the United States, his open visits with West Ford ceased. Now, John Augustine Washington's sons, Bushrod and Corbin, made a gift of the boy West to their mother, Hannah Washington, following the death of their father in 1802. Hannah Washington's last will and testament decreed that the lad called West Ford was to be set free at the age of 21. Around the year 1806, West Ford was in fact granted his freedom. To commemorate the occasion, an artist came to Mount Vernon and sketched his portrait. In 1812, West Ford married Priscilla Bell, a free woman. Their 4 children, William, Daniel, Jane, and Julia, were educated at Mount Vernon Plantation, despite laws which restricted the instructions of blacks in these times. In 1829, Bushrod Washington died. He willed 160 acres of land adjacent to Mount Vernon to West Ford, who continued to live on Mount Vernon estate. A detailed entry into the recently released Fairfax County Register of freed slaves dated October 17, 1831, described West Ford as a yellow man, about 47 years of age, 5 feet 8.5 inches, pleasant countenance, wrinkled, resembled a scar on his left cheek and a scar on the left corner of his upper lip. In 1833, West Ford sold his land and purchased 214 acres adjacent to it, and the area is known today as the black community of Gum Springs, Virginia. Over the next several years, West Ford was frequently highlighted in the media, making his private life a matter of public record in 1850. 2 Virginia newspapers, the Alexandria Gazette and the Virginia Advertiser, carried articles describing his prestigious position and authority at Mount Vernon. In 1857, an entry into the Fairfax County deed books noted that Ford divided his land among his 4 children, giving each of them 52 3/4 acres. In 1858, Ford was sketched a second time, this time by a reporter and artist, Benson Lucing. And in 1859, Harper's New Monthly magazine featured an interview with West Ford, in which he spoke about his property on the Huntington Creek, where he planned to retire after the Washington estate was no longer in the Washington family. In June 1863, an alien Westport was brought back to Mount Vernon Estate by Mount Vernon Ladies Association. The association cared for Westport until his death on July 20, 1863. The following day, the Alexandria Gazette carried an obituary stating, Westport, an aged colored man, who lived in Mount Vernon Estate. A greater portion of his life died yesterday afternoon at his home on the estate. He was, we hear, in the 79th year of his age. He was well known to most of our older citizens.
In the traditional motion picture story, the villains are usually defeated. The ending is a happy one. I can make no such promise for the picture you're about to watch. The story isn't over. You and the audience are part of the conflict.
More human beings were slaughtered in the 20th century than all previous centuries combined.
We're talking congressional record, 135 million dead. Their entire purpose was to detach our culture from any moral anchors whatsoever. You look at the changes in America since 1960, perhaps. The whole culture's been transformed.
They're coming out of the belief that the village should raise the child. The village means the government.
They have deliberately destroyed the American family understanding of the foundational block that built a society.
We've come from Norman Rockwell's America to Hugh Hefner's America. If we lose the Judeo-Christian framework, we're lost forever.
While the USA goes around the world expounding on the virtues of its way of life, it is obvious that those in charge place little value on human life. They are willing to kill thousands, even millions, for profit, for power, for money, for oil and resources. The USA doesn't even value the lives of its own citizens. Witness the numerous testings of weapons, drugs, medications, pesticides, GMOs, subterfuge on its own population. One of the few developed nations that fails its citizens totally in the area of the right to adequate health care. Those who cannot afford it do not get it. Financially, mentally, and physically robbed by politicians, banksters, and industry without the capacity to understand how to care for themselves, they end up homeless on the street, begging for money, being robbed, being beaten, being hungry, committing crimes because they have no choice. Then there are the families. The lives of these families are becoming pure hell. There is violence, destruction, and threats. An all-out attack from the health system, the government, law enforcement, and even neighbors.
The state itself is ultimate. If there's no law higher than the state, and if there's no law higher than the state, there's no appeal against it.
They're training them for the collective, and a collective mindset, and a dependency mindset.
And it seems that they, again, want to have people be uneducated, so then they do become wards of the state. They're dependent on the government to provide everything for them.
So, meet the mentally ill of the USA and the victims of the many who go without being cared for. Meet the disposable people. The political pundits and politicians have started a mantra about gun control in order to gain more control over the population. It's not the guns, stupid. It's the lack of care for your own people. It is suggested that the USA get its own house in order before dictating to the rest of the world. Use the many blessings and resources of the land, the people, for your own, and not for trotting around the globe, killing others for profit, whilst those at home suffer. The capitalist system sees people as a disposable commodity, to be thrown out if not productive or useful in some way. The American dream. You have to be asleep to believe it.
Once people figure it out, they're going to do what people everywhere.
So much of what happened during the Cold War is still relatively unknown to the general public. On May 24, 1963, the Harvard Crimson reported that 400 million copper wires had been launched 2,300 miles above the planet and were circling Earth. No, it wasn't an accident. It was part of Project West 4, a plan devised and executed by the U.S. as a means of ensuring that long-range communications couldn't be compromised by the Soviets. The U.S. feared that as a part of an attack, the Soviets would somehow disable the telephone and telegraph cables on the ocean floor. That would leave only radio, which is notoriously undependable due to outages caused by solar flares and the like. An MIT scientist said he had the perfect plan. Give radio waves a boost of stability by surrounding the planet with a bunch of copper wires. It was guessed that they'd just fall back to Earth eventually, so there wouldn't be a problem. And that's exactly what happened, except not all made it back to Earth. On their way to space, many of the wires fused, forming large clumps that remain in orbit today.